consciousness, the map of consciousness, and how that helps you to level up your internal power, feel a deep sense of peace so you can let go of fears, stresses, blame, complaint, all the negative force and resistance in your life, and step into what we call the state, a state of internal power and peace. Now, I'm Sifa John Kogan. I'm an internal Wing Chun master under the Ip Man Choi Shung Tin lineage. I lived in Hong Kong for 10 years and have been studying internal Kung Fu for 25 years. Further, I lived in Cyprus and studied with the Researchers of Truth and an inner Christianity tradition where I learned the inner teachings of Christian wisdom to elevate oneself spiritually. Now, you're here at my Kung Fu Academy in Sydney, Australia. But more importantly, I wanted to talk with you today about consciousness itself. Now, growing up, I came across this concept that man cannot do. And I found this from a teacher called Gurdjieff. And then I found it in other spiritual literature as well. And this was quite perplexing, quite confusing for me to understand. What do you mean man cannot do? I can do things. Look, I can lift up this laptop. I am doing this, right? So it didn't really make sense. But once I found the map of consciousness, which I can show you here, this map, which actually shows the different levels, once I found this, things started to click and really make sense. Meaning, man cannot do is essentially that we are an expression of consciousness. So from the high levels, enlightenment, peace, love, freedom, to the low levels, we have fear, apathy, blame, complaint. We are, let's say, you could say channeling or having this consciousness flow through us. Now this is quite a high concept and a strange idea, but let's break this down a bit more simply. So a human being, right, has levels of consciousness. From down at the lower fields, from shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, to higher, love, joy, peace, towards enlightenment. Now, the great ones, the Christ, the Buddha, we're up at 1,000, at the highest possible level of consciousness for a human. And then we all know people that are down at anger or fear or anxiety or grief or hatred. So the lower fields, like shame, down at 20. So you can see there's a variety of different levels of consciousness. Now, these are all different fields or frequencies, very much like radio stations. But what I wanted to highlight for you is how does understanding consciousness actually help us in our lives? I know a lot of martial artists are here following me, but also people interested in spirituality. So from a martial standpoint, how does consciousness relate to being powerful? Consciousness power from martial application. But also in spirituality and life, how do you become more powerful? How do you step into your potential? How do you feel the power within you so you can express and manifest that day to day in life? Now, we have a triangle. Now you have consciousness here. Consciousness, I hope I'm spelling that correctly. Consciousness, intention. So intention is like the way you align yourself with the mind. And then you also have surrender. So you've got three components here which surrender. Surrender, meaning surrender is letting go of lower fields of consciousness, lower thought forms and emotions so that you can step into the higher fields. Now, these are three parts to this equation of you developing your internal power. Letting go and surrender, intention and alignment, and consciousness itself. So understanding consciousness. Now, the problems that you meet on each angle of developing your internal power is understanding and navigating through the levels of consciousness. Meaning, the fears, the doubts, the blame, the complaint, the resentment, all the negative emotions that one needs to navigate through the fields of consciousness. And then further, how do you let these go? So how do you let them go using the surrender technique? And then here, intention is how do you align with the higher fields. So selecting and aligning with peace, with truth, with love, with the higher field. So you have intention on one part where you direct yourself and align with, surrender on another where you learn to let go, and understanding consciousness itself so that you can navigate that field. Now, really a key detail here initially is learning how to take full responsibility. Now, I just want to highlight this one key point. I'm not going to go too deeply into this today, but I'll give you some basic under responsibility. Did I even spell that correctly? Responsibility. I don't even think I did, but there is responsibility. I don't think I spelled that right, but who cares? You get the idea. So the reason that's important, we look at this map here, the map of consciousness, famously designed and discovered by Dr. David Hawkins. So this line here is the line of integrity, which takes someone from the levels of force and survival into the levels of reason and spiritual enlightenment, let's say. So from force to power. Now, this line here represents full responsibility and integrity, meaning anyone who is in a state of blame, complaint, victim mindset can never really truly step into their internal power because they have placed their power onto things outside of them. And this takes this one here, full and radical responsibility. If you take radical and full responsibility for yourself, your life, your relationships, your emotions, everything in your life, you put yourself above the line of integrity. Then you move into the fields of power and the, let's say, the expansive upward fields of your potential. So, simply put, learning the map of consciousness, how it functions and operates, and how those fields flow through us, will maximize your internal power by stepping you into the fields of power firstly, and then giving you, let's say, a constant habitual access to those fields via not going into the lower emotions. Learning how to surrender and let go of the negatives, learning how to align with intention with the higher fields, understanding the map of consciousness and responsibility. Now, to tie it back to what I initially said, man cannot do. That's a strange topic, right? It's a strange sentence, really. Because you see and you look around, you see people doing things, but the doing is a consequence of one's being, human being. So how you be leads to what you do. Meaning, you can think of this in very simple terms. We have all heard of the term your state, like your state, the way you are, how you feel and how you think and how you're energized. Your state leads to your actions. Think about it. If you're in a negative, depressed state, you're not going to take positive action. I'll give you a simple example. So someone's on the road, suffering, bleeding, maybe they've been beaten. An angry person walks past them. They're in a state of anger or hatred. They might kick them, take their wallet, walk off, or they might just ignore them if they're in a state of apathy or whatever. But if a loving, peaceful person walks past, they may stop and care for them, take them to a hospital, make sure they're okay. So, they were both humans, they both walked past, but the difference was their level of consciousness, their state. So the consciousness is expressing itself through us as humans, and that leads to what we do. So being precedes doing. So man cannot do, he can only be, and the actions proceed from that. Now, if you want to go deeper into these teachings of consciousness and learn how that applies to developing and bringing out your internal power so you can live with a state of calm, confident consciousness, then depending on where you're watching this, there's probably a link below or above or somewhere to enroll in my upcoming workshop. I have a workshop where it's an hour and a half, probably go for 2 hours with questions, where we go deep into consciousness and how that applies to internal power generation for combat, but also into life, so you can live a peaceful, powerful, and free life. Okay guys, thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.